Yeah, so when you and I met first and then discussed what we could talk about during the show, and you mentioned what happens, what is your job at Transact? So what happens when you take on a client, and usually you are the guy, it's like the Ghostbusters, like right? So they call you and they say, okay, we got this, and you figure out what the situation is with this brand, what's going on. So you are the one who has to figure out what to do to improve the performance of a brand. So tell us your methodology. How do you do that?
Yeah, so that's right. I'm often put in a position where I'm coming onto a new piece of business, looking at a brand for the first time and trying to understand what is the landscape here and how can we meet this brand's objectives. And so the first step for me is to understand what are the brand's objectives. I have a whole process which we'll go into once we understand their objectives. But for me, one of the biggest pitfalls and one of the earliest pitfalls that I find in this process is that a lot of sellers, a lot of brands don't actually have specifically defined objectives for what they're trying to achieve on Amazon. I often meet sellers who have goals like increase market share or steal share of voice from competitors or increase ROAS to X dollars. And that's a great place to start with an overarching goal like that. But when it comes to implementing a media strategy to achieve that goal, that's where sellers, I find, often don't know how to get granular with their objectives. And so the first thing that I try to do when I'm looking at a piece of business for the first time is understand what are your objectives and then working with the sellers to get really specific with their goals. What specifically are you trying to achieve in order to get to your broader objective?
Okay, but this is kind of like a politician's answer. You didn't give me an answer. Okay, so I remember you shared your methodology. You look at specific things for a brand. So because if you ask any business owner, so what are your objectives? They're going to say, make more money. Okay,
Right.
so that's not an objective that you can work with. So therefore, as professionals, you have to define the objectives for them to make more money. So, and then of course, there's a methodology to it. So I know you've got a winning methodology. Share with us your approach to for brands to make more money.
Yeah. So I call this customer search group analysis. And this is basically a process that I've been developing over several years in the industry. But I feel like at Transact, I've finally been able to get it to a point where it's repeatable, reproducible, and it can be applied to any business at any scale. And essentially, it's a way to understand how shoppers are searching for your products on Amazon, how they're finding your products on Amazon, how are they interacting with the category, with your brand, with your competitors' brands. Um, and it comes down to the nuts and bolts, is compiling data from a couple of different sources and merging it together so that you can understand what's winnable, what's achievable, how much will it cost to win, and what is the opportunity size here. So some of the metrics that we like to look at involve data from three different sources. So the first thing that you'll need is a scraping tool, and it
Well,
really doesn't matter. Yeah,
hold on one sec. So, because you've just shared a few steps, I want that to sink in because it's when you conflate them all, people get lost. So I'd like to dissect because then we can really get into each one of those. So the first one is what is winnable. So define what that means in terms of winning. Are you talking about a keyword? Are you talking about price point? What are you looking at to determine what is winnable?
yeah. So what we're looking at here are customer personas. The purpose of the customer search group exercise is to bucket search terms, whatever people are typing into the search bar on Amazon in order to find the products they're looking for, bucketing those search terms into personas and then defining those personas. What constitutes the shopper that types this sort of thing into Amazon? What are they looking for? What are they interested in? And then is that persona winnable? So can we, brand XYZ, dominate this persona? Can we make sure that when these search terms that constitute this persona are typed into Amazon, we have a holistic presence that the shopper is immediately met with? Sponsored brand ads right at the top, sponsored product or organic spots in the top of search positions, sponsored brand video ads at the fold. These are, we can go into an endless level of granularity here, but essentially, can we win this persona? Can we be the primary brand that is shown on Amazon when these search terms are entered by people who constitute this persona?
Okay, so that's the winnable. So we'll dig into that in a minute.